it plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown like
Roll call.
Gurnett. Gray. Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Thompson. Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the pledge and invocation by Councilmember Chris Jerem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just thought as we come together today, we could reflect once again on the violence that continues to plague our city, and at least from my perspective, I've heard from more and more people in my district asking me what they can do to step up and help lend a hand in some way to combat the issues that just don't seem to be stopping. So just food for thought as to community engagement is definitely a huge part of that. We can only hope and pray for more. Amen.
City Clerk certifies publication of the Daily Record on September 26th. Notes for a pre-council and regular City Council meeting September 30th, 2014. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Omaha City Council. This meeting is conducted in public and by law may only address the topics listed on the published agenda. The council will hear testimony but will not engage in debate of issues with the public at this meeting. During testimony, it's not appropriate to applaud or convey disapproval. These actions only detract from the formal decorum of the meeting. At this time, please turn off or mute any electronic device. And before we get started, Mr. Clerk, we have a public service announcement by Councilmember Milton.
I just wanted to note tonight we have a march scheduled starting at the Correctional Center. We're going to march to the courthouse for in recognition of domestic violence. The Domestic Violence Council is doing that, and we're going to have speakers of domestic violence. That was originally scheduled at 6 p.m., but based upon the storms that I think are rolling in here in the next couple hours, we are still doing it, but we're going to postpone it till 7 p.m. So if any of you know anybody or if any of you would like to come, we are meeting at 7 o'clock p.m. instead of 6. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Ordinance on second reading of bonds. Item number 5, ordinance authorizing and directing issue of general obligation bonds and issuing of general obligation refunding bonds to the City of Omaha in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $81,550,000 to be turned for identification purpose, various purpose refunding bonds series 2014A and general obligation refunding bond series 2014B.
Public hearing on number 5 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Ordinance on final reading and planning board attachments. We'll take 6 and 7 together. It's one case. 6 is ordinance to approve an amendment to the future land use element of the master plan to allow a community 60-acre mixed-use center for the intersection of 192nd and West Maple Road. A, planning board and planning department recommend approval. And 7 is resolution of the preliminary plat entitled Atler's View, located southeast of 192nd and West Maple Road, along attached conditions. Hereby accepted and preparation of final plat is hereby authorized. A, planning board and planning department recommend approval.
Public hearings on items 6 and 7 are today. Proponents, please. Ms. Underwood.
Hi, I'm Katie Underwood with Olson Associates, 2111 South 67th Street. I'm just here representing the applicant and am happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Any opponents? Public hearings closed.
I would move to approve and just say how lucky we are to have distinguished Omaha School Board member with us today. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Gurnett? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Milton? Pauls? Thompson? Mr. President?
Yes.
6 and 7 are passed, 7-0.
You actually have a day job, right? That's great. That's great. 2 jobs, that's right. Two jobs plus. Next item, please.
Resolution of preliminary plats of subdivision agreements. Item number 8, resolution of the preliminary plat entitled MCC Elkhorn Campus located at 829 North of 204th Street, along with attached conditions, hereby accepted and preparation of final plat is hereby authorized. A, Planning Board, Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on number 8 is today. We do intend to lay this over today, so those that are here to speak certainly can, but we'd encourage you to wait until that 5-week time frame so you may speak at that point if desired. So we'll take proponents real quick. Any proponents on item 8 today? Any opponents? Thank you, Mr. Jerem.
Yes, this is one that the council has been talking about for a while, and we laid this over the last time to allow the parties to, at our request, consider a mediation. And I believe the mayor has sent out a request to at least Metro, perhaps others, inviting them to participate in a mediation. And I believe from pre-council today, it's still the strong desire of this council that the 4 parties to this situation sit down and discuss in mediation a pathway or a possibility of reaching a pathway to get this situation resolved. I think it's something that the constituents of the elected bodies of Metro and the city of Omaha are interested in, as well as I believe the board of the bus company would be interested in, as well as I think the Gotch property owner affected by this as well. So I'd like to ask Mr. Kratz, am I correct that there are 4 parties that really kind of have an interest in this? The bus company, Metro, the city of Omaha, the community college, and Mr. Gotch?
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. That's correct. Those have been the 4 parties that have been involved off and on over the last several years.
And did Mr. Thielen, on behalf of the mayor sent a letter proposing a mediation?
That's correct. I believe that happened maybe September 23rd or thereabouts.
Okay. So the city, your law department would participate in the mediation?
Yes.
Mr. Lang, would you come up?
Jim Lang, 11718 Nicholas Street, attorney representing Gotch Land Company.
Would Gotch Land Company participate in this mediation?
I received the letter from the mayor, I believe, yesterday, and forwarded it to my client. He's looking at it, and he's going to respond to me. So now I don't have a formal response, but we want to get the matter resolved, Mr.
Is that mediation something generally you recommend to your clients?
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
So I should have a response. I would have a response this week.
Thank you.
To the council.
Mr. Huck? Or Mr. Cannella? Or both of you? It's the old saying, how many lawyers does it take to do something? That's a good thing.
Actually, Bob Cannella is going to give the response of Metro.
Okay. Mr. Cannella, would you just state your name and address for the record? It could be your professional address.
Certainly. Robert Cannella, 10050 Regency Circle, Suite 200, Omaha. I represent the Board of Governors of the college. The mayor did, in fact, send a letter to me and to others offering to mediate. At this juncture, the only response I can give you is that the Board of Governors is not interested in mediation at this juncture. They feel and believe that mediation is useful when there are negotiations that have broken down or have not moved forward. In this case, though, there simply have been no negotiations. The college has made overtures, invited offers, the last one being 3 months ago in the mayor's office. So far, we've had no response. The college's Board of Governors feels that this matter's been pending now for several years, not necessarily at this level, but these discussions have been in progress for several years. And it's time for the council to resolve this issue. The council, I guess I have to lay it on the council because you passed the zoning ordinances, but I know it was done on recommendation to you. About 27 years after the college opened at the Elkhorn Valley campus, the city rezoned the property agricultural. Frankly, that's nonsense. We've been given different explanations for why that happened. None of them make any sense to us. It's time to move this forward. If there is ever to be a mutually acceptable resolution, the way to move it forward is to get the property properly zoned and without the condition of the 203rd Street connection to it, and then the parties can talk. But as long as the city administration continues to try to strong-arm the Board of Governors of the college, there's not going to be a voluntary recognition or resolution. So,
all right. So now,
we
Mr.
urge you to
Cannella,
move forward.
did the Board of Governors take a vote to reject mediation, or is this a polling of the board that was done?
This is based on communications from the board to me. Now, I have to tell you, the mayor's letter just came last Friday, I believe I received it, and there's been no discussion with the board since then. But the discussions prior to that time were what I just related to you.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing what your perception is of your client. I understand you're the lawyer, and we don't shoot the messenger here. But how disappointing, in my view, as an attorney on my other job, that a process that has such a high rate of success in resolving disputes in the informal dispute resolution process is something that at least the board members that you spoke to were not willing to support. Some of the things I'm sure you've seen in the past with your clients, as I have with mine, is sometimes they get stubborn. And sometimes it's a judge, it takes a judge in litigation when the mediation process prior to litigation has been rejected, will then order the parties to go mediate. And if this proposal doesn't get approved in a way that the Board of Governors, your client, finds acceptable, then that's the really only recourse they have, is to go litigate and go into the court system and face a judge who's likely to say, go mediate before you take the court's time to hear the dispute. Observationally, I would say that I'm going to support a layover again today to allow you as the attorney to go back to speak with your client, the Board of Governors, to perhaps let the process of mediation have a chance. Because if you go through spending a day in that process and you get to the end of the road after all of the grievances and hard feelings and positional statements about how you think you've been treated along the way, and then you learn that you still weren't able to get it done, then I might have a different position on this. But it seems that, without speaking for your board, and I know many of your board members and they're good people, without exploring this and taking what is a few hours out of everybody's day to probably go across the street with a mediator who has such a high success rate, or another competent mediator in the area, and to allow that to work seems to me, having heard 3 of the 4 sides, I hadn't yet heard from the bus company's perspective. It seems like something that would be prudent to do. So with that, I'd also like to thank our colleague, Dr. Thompson, for his efforts in this regard. I believe it's in your district. And thank him for all the work he continues to do to try to get this worked out. But having said that, and Would you at least pass along that message to your client?
That message has been passed along to the client,
Okay.
but I will pass it along again.
And as I'm frequently told by the judges that I tell to my clients aren't interested in mediation, go ask them again. And I would move for a 5-week layover.
Second. And continue the public hearing.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Cannella? One more time.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and restate your name.
Oh, Robert Cannella, 10050 Regency Circle, Suite 200.
I don't want my colleagues to think that that you and I had not talked before the board took their vote. We did talk, is that correct, sir?
Yes, we did.
And when we talked, there may have been some miscommunication between what you thought I might have said that the mayor, what her position was. So there was a little bit of a miscommunication before that vote. Is that correct, sir?
You and I did have that discussion, and when we had that discussion, I thought there was a miscommunication, but I went back and reviewed my notes, and I don't think we miscommunicated. I think I told them exactly what you told me.
Well, for the record, I want my colleagues to know that what Mr. Cannella told the board is not what I said. So sometimes when people have communication, you could easily get a mixed communication or a mixed message in that communication. Having said that, Mr. Cannella, I would like to say that if there is a possibility that there was a miscommunication, that perhaps the board doesn't know exactly what they voted on, and so having them vote again might be smart, or at least approaching them with the clarification that you and I talked about. Would you agree that that's a good thing to do, sir?
I think it's a good thing that there be clear communication, which is why I suggested that the mayor, if the city wants to mediate, that the mayor put it in writing.
That was our last communication.
Correct.
And since then, the mayor has put it in written form.
She has.
And so I'd like for my colleagues to know that even though there was a board vote that was taken, that vote may not have been 100% what I thought the conversation was going or should have been. That's not to say I'm blaming anybody. I'm a professor of communications, and I understand that those things happen every day. So I would appreciate you taking the new crystallized, clear message back. If you don't, then I would come to a different conclusion about Metro. But right now, I've been extremely open, and I've also been a champion because I am myself an educator. And they reached out to me first, not only because it was my district, but because I was also an educator, and they wanted to know if I understood their point of view from an education point of view. So I'm hoping that clearer minds prevail, and that integrity prevails, and it's important, I think, for us to get the initial intent put on the table as opposed to maybe a message that was slightly muddled. And so I'm hoping that gets done. Thank you, sir. And I want to...
If I could, I would just like to say, I didn't mean to infer in any way that you engaged in any impropriety. I just meant, I think there was some confusion in when some conversations occurred and they got out of order.
I've been in this business for going on 14 years, and I understand political theater, and I understand double talk. I'm no stranger to the business of running the city. And I know what it is that I said, but I also know that you have thousands and hundreds of cases, and that communication blockages happen every day. I know that. And so I'm not necessarily blaming. I'm just saying that the original intent was that the mayor would go for mediation, but at that time, I was informed that they wanted the board members to be present. since that time, she has been advised not to do the board member piece of it. So in our communication, there was some confusion, and then perhaps the board didn't get the full picture. So I think it's important that the board understand that if they say no, that they say no on exactly what was intended and not a muddled picture. Thank you, sir.
Fair enough.
Now, I want to also thank Councilman Jerem for his help. It's always good to have lawyers on board here, and because lawyers understand these things better than social scientists, of which I am. But thank you very much for your help. And I, too, believe that this should be mitigated, or at least mediated. And it just doesn't make sense for two governing bodies to have a public clash, and then this council be used as a tool for those two entities to get at each other. One thing I don't want is this council to be the scapegoat. So I strongly agree with my colleague, Mr. Jerem, that this ought to be mediated, go back, get it done. If it doesn't get done, then that sends us another message. But I believe it should be, and I do believe it will be. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't like to do this. I do it occasionally, but I almost feel like this is deja vu. The number of years I spent in the legislature, the peer institutions were at each other's throats so many times. Was in the field of education. I was so disappointed. It was hit all the time. We're better than you. We deserve this, etc., etc. So when you want to throw this back at in my lap now, I want you to think twice on that. I appreciate the idea of mediating, because I've lived this in the past with you and your peer institutions throughout the state of Nebraska. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Milton.
And I just wanted to be clear, Mr. Jerem and I work in mediation all the time, but I want to be clear to the public who's watching, we're not asking a mediator to make a determination. We are not asking that the parties go to, that would be arbitration. We are simply asking that the parties sit down with an experienced mediator who just helps them discuss what the options are and tries to help the parties potentially reach an agreement. Now, in all mediations, that requires all parties to be somewhat open-minded and somewhat willing to give a little bit on something. And I mean all parties. I think there's a retired judge that says if everybody walks away from a mediation with a settlement unhappy, though, it was a good settlement. So, and sometimes that's the case, but I really don't want this council to have to decide all or nothing when there's probably something better in between that we might not be able to do. I wish in the court system the judges can order mediation. This council doesn't have the ability to order that, but I hope that the message is clear to all that I think everybody sitting here today would at least have a lot more respect for the parties when they come back here if they aren't able to mediate, as opposed to somebody that says, I'm not even going to give it a try. It can't hurt. It really can't hurt. And potentially at the end of the day, the parties may reach an agreement and maybe we could mend some of the relationships that seem to have broken down between these parties. So that would be my hope. I strongly encourage everybody to at least engage in the mediation. And if you can't agree, I'll accept that. That happens all the time. But I don't think it hurts anything to try. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we have an opportunity here still. I think we can mediate successfully. I think there are some willing parties that are willing to budge a little if they can get a little. I think we're in a position with this 5-week layover, and I think we should support the 5-week layover. I think at the end of the day, we may have something that everybody won't necessarily like living with, but I think we have an opportunity to get some things accomplished, and I would be ready also if there was some assistance needed on my end. But I think that we have an opportunity here, and I'm going to be optimistic about it, and think that we can get a couple of things done. You've had the lead on this, Dr. Thompson. I think you ought to continue there, and if you need any help or support or any conversations on the side or whatever we need to do to get this done, I think we can get it done. But I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to achieve something in this 5 weeks. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Yes, just one more thing in relation to a question that Mr. Jerem had. I did have a conversation with Kurt Simons of Metro Area Transit, and he is willing to be part of the mediation, and he said I could go on record as saying that he would be part of that.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So now we have 3 of the 4. We're batting 75%. Now that we're in the baseball playoffs, I think there's not a major leaguer that wouldn't take 3 for 4 for the day.
Go Royals.
And the Royals do play today against the Oakland A's, and I'll be paying attention to that later. I would hope that the Metro Board would take a vote on this in public, not a poll of the members, so that the community and their constituents could see, whether they want to avail themselves of the process that could allow all of the grievances to be aired, the negotiation to take place, and hopefully a process that can bring the parties back together rather than prolong the division between them. Or take a public vote that shows the people that they represent that they're not interested in that. And that's fine too, but I think the public has a right to know whether that's something that they're interested in.
Thank you. No further lights. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Milton. Pauls. Thompson. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's laid over 5 weeks, November 4th, and continues public hearing at 7 to 0.
It's tomorrow, right.
Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held October 14th, agenda item number 9 shall be laid over 3 weeks to October 21st for publication of public hearing. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, agenda item number 10 shall be laid over 3 weeks to October 21st. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, agenda item number 11 shall be laid over 3 weeks to October 21st for publication of public hearing. Liquor, item number 12, Live Lounge, 2279 South 67th Street. Request permission for an addition, present Class C and catering liquor license, location to extend the existing outdoor patio area from 94 by 26 to 102 by 26. We have communications from permits and inspections saying they need their proper permits.
Public hearing on number 12 is today. Proponents, please.
Dave Homan, 317 North 92nd Street, on behalf of Live Lounge. I just want to let the council know that the permit for the fence addition was filed today, so that's in process.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other proponents today? Any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Were you addressing the Blue Line
No. No, this is number 12. Yeah. Motion and a second, subject to the permits. Roll call.
Gurnett? Yes. Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Yes. Milton? Yes. Pauls? Yes. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Approved 7 to 0, proper permits. Item 13, Joe's Crab Shack, 701 North 102nd Street. Request permission to appoint Lamonte Anderson manager.
Public hearing on number 13 is today. Are there any proponents?
Lamonte Anderson, 701 North 102nd Street for Joe's Crab Shack.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Motion. Second.
Roll call.
Gurnett? Yes. Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Yes. Milton? Yes. Pauls? Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Approved 7 to 0.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll take items 14 and 15 together. They're 2 lottery permits. 14 is Big Red is granted approval to operate a satellite Keno location at Flashbacks 3015 South 83rd Plaza. And 15 is to grant approval to operate a satellite Keno location at Union Pizzeria and Sports Bar 3636 North 156th Street.
Public hearings on numbers 14 and 15 are today. Proponents, please. Ms. Coffey.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, my name's Katrina Coffey. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Big Red Keno. We're located at 11248 John Paul Boulevard. I have with me today the 2 owners of these 2 locations, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearings closed.
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
14 and 15 are adopted 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause an item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed consent agenda shall be taken up by City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed unless otherwise provided by City Council rules of order.
The public hearings on agenda items number 16 through 19 were held on September 23rd.
Second.
Roll call.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls? Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
16 through 19 are passed 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items number 20 through 29 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, and who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. Seeing none, public hearings closed.
Motion approved.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if you have any questions.
Uh,
My name is Captain Michelle Bang with the Omaha Police Department. I'm here on item number 26, the portable radio purchase.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Bang?
Do you have any questions?
Mr. Gurnett.
I apologize. I would not have gotten up had I known.
In looking at the attachments, I see that there's going to be a trade-in value from the old 700-plus radios to the new ones that you plan on purchasing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. The possibility of having, I understand that our current system has the capability of contacting the Nebraska State Patrol in the Troop A region, which is Omaha.
Correct.
Okay. The possibility of that becoming statewide with the system that they're putting in place, is that likely or not?
Currently, no. Our statewide system is a VHS system. We are buying 800 megahertz radios, and quite honestly, because Troop A is our main focus, we didn't feel it was cost effective to buy a dual band radio. But we have interoperability now with the Nebraska State Patrol Troop A, as well as multiple other jurisdictions around us, directly surrounding us.
That's satisfying. Thank you, Captain.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know, and I don't expect you to answer this. I'm sort of setting this out because this morning we talked a little bit about this. I read over the thing about the radio, and I understand the necessity we need to update and the trade-in value, which it was very well outlined. And it went through a number of checks. All the offices that checked you off to see things were right, I was impressed with, which I'm assuming is normal. I'm just trying to set something out. I'm also looking at, for us to be talking about the utilization of body cameras in the future. I'm just making that public now because that's an item I think we do need to be discussing, because apparently it's throughout the United States it's a topic that's out there, and I just wanted to use this time just to bring that to the front.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerem.
Yes, and as I understand it from sitting on the Public Safety Committee, there's been issues with the current radios that have basically exceeded their useful life. The repair person and the doing the MacGyver routine to get them to work just doesn't work anymore.
Yes, our current radios are 12 years old. They were bought in 2002. And I would like to kind of equate this to first technologies and today's technologies. For the same price, you are getting a whole heck of a lot more. This radio is going to increase our functionality. It's going to allow us to have GPS. We're going to be able to increase our capacity by having TDMA channels available and working in conjunction with Douglas County 911 and their upgrade. I believe we are getting a very good value for our tax dollars.
Well, and it's more fundamental than the value. I mean, what is the value of an officer who's stranded with a radio that doesn't work, that needs help?
Absolutely.
So we owe it to the safety and security of our officers on the street to provide them with the means and the ability to communicate. Frequently, they're out of their cars, they're on foot, and they encounter situations where their life actually depends upon, or the life of a citizen depends upon, their ability to communicate with that remote radio. And so when you hear that our current radios are 12 years old, they've been patched together rather remarkably for a substantial period of time, to me this is a very worthwhile investment, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Public hearings are closed. Roll call.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Yes. Milton. Yes. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
20 through 29 are adopted 7-0. Resolution item number 30, resolution of Elliott Fort CRA located within Census Tract 0300 Block Group 3 and 0600 Block Group 2, consisting of approximately 121.8 acres, generally described between North 30th Street and Florence Boulevard, south of Ellison Avenue, is hereby declared to meet the standards of substandard and blighted area in need of redevelopment.
Public hearing on number 30 is today. Proponents, please.
Yes, I'm Don Seaton, City Planner with the Omaha City Planning Department. Approval of this resolution would establish an area near 30th and Fort as a community redevelopment area. That area has Ellison Avenue on the north as its northern boundary. It's also bounded by North 30th Street on the west, Florence Boulevard on the east, and Sorensen Parkway along the south. Designation as a CRA would allow the use of tax increment financing within the area to promote economic development. Our staff began a review of this area as a prospective CRA when we were approached by the development community about a specific project in the area, and they were interested in using tax increment financing as a potential source of support for the project. Specifically, the White Lotus Group was interested in developing, and is interested still in developing, the former Mr. C's site at 30th and Fort. You're probably familiar with this. It's a site that's been sitting pretty much vacant building, the site falling further into disrepair and impacting the neighborhood in a negative way. The study that was conducted by City Planning noted that the census block group within the area and the data meets the criteria for designation as a CRA that's established in Nebraska Community Development Law. There's relatively high unemployment, comparatively low median per capita income, The structures are older. They need to be 40 years of age or older. For an average age, they're 75 years old, and the population is declining. We had a neighborhood hearing that was very interesting, very well attended by the neighbors of North Omaha. It was at the Florence Public Library on July 22nd. I think they arrived initially very suspicious of what the city may have in mind, but throughout the course of the hearing they became more relaxed and were really overall very supportive of the idea of redeveloping that site. The proposed CRA was reviewed by the City Planning Commission in August and received support, and planning staff recommends its approval.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Mr. Gray.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank the Planning Department for their efforts, and specifically Jim Thiel. Jim and I talked about this, doing this for, I think we've been in the process of having discussion about this for about the last 4 or 5 months, and finally got it to a point where I think it needs to be. The White Lotus Group needed that designation in order to move forward with the demolition the Blue Lion, of the, we'll talk about that later, but the Mr. C site has continued to deteriorate, as was said earlier, and this was a necessary step that needed to be taken in order for that process to move forward. So the designation is something that we have been discussing, something that I'm supportive of in that area, because it gives us a chance, first of all, to redevelop certain portions of that area, but just as important, it also provides opportunities for Metro Community College across the street as well, with the new development that's going to go in and some of the more proposed ideas that are going to be coming forward, hopefully fairly soon. But this designation was important to get that step started, and I just want to thank the Planning Department for the work that they did to move this along as quickly as they did. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is that a motion?
That's a motion to approve.
Roll call.
Gurnett. Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Thompson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Adopted 7-0. Item number 31, resolution attached Kuntz Park Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan for the redevelopment project site generally bounded by 24th Street on the west, Saylor Street on the north, Florence Boulevard on the east, and Pratt Street on the south, which contemplates the revitalization and redevelopment of the neighborhood through infill and new construction, and the city's participation through TIF financing is hereby approved.
Public hearing on number 31 is today. Proponents, please. Ms. Hadley.
Good afternoon. Bridget Hadley, City Planning. Before you is a TIF redevelopment project plan for a project in the Kuntz Park area, or just a little north of the Kuntz Park, actually. It's outlined in this blue. So this is Saylor Street. I think I might have this. We'll go this way. So here's Florence Boulevard. This blue boundary basically is in the alley between Florence Boulevard and 21st Street. So it continues north to Saylor, west to the alley between 24th and 23rd, and then Manderson on the south, up 22nd to Laird, and then back. So this is the basic boundary of this project plan. This particular area, as I drove through it, I'm familiar with it, having grown up in that area and had relatives over in that area, but having been away for a long time, driving back through it, it is characterized by housing in poor condition, not all of them, disrepair, deterioration, and a lot of vacant lots. This particular project is brought to us through a development arm that is a subsidiary of Habitat for Humanity, 1701 LLC. They are going to be the developer, and they are not a stranger to the city in terms of revitalization and rehabbing in communities such as this. So we're very familiar with their model and what they do, and this particular project gives the city a chance to partner with them and to bring back a better pride of neighborhood and residency and home ownership in this particular area. This particular project plan proposes to, excuse me, provide infill housing in this area, 23 houses over the next 2 years in this particular area. And as you drive through, you can see some of the difference in the area, and you can also see just an example of their work. The particular project will allow for TIF-eligible expenses to be covered. The amount of TIF is about $350,642, and the total project cost is about 3.3, almost 3.4 million. And I want to keep my comments brief because I believe a representative of the developer is here and may want to give some comments. But this is for owner-occupied housing. It is a model that we have looked at and vetted, and we think it's a very good model for this project to move forward. It is not the first type of owner-occupied housing TIF project that the city has seen. Miami Heights, maybe some remember, is another project that's similar to that in the city of Omaha. So with that, I would entertain any questions and also ask for your approval.
Thank you. Any other proponents today?
Hi, my name is Ken Marr, 1701 North 24th Street. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Habitat for Humanity, and I'm here for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any other proponents today?
Nancy Predall with Lamper Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road. I'm also the chair of the board for Habitat for Humanity in Omaha, and I would ask the council's support of this TIF project. Habitat for Humanity has an existing investment in the Coons Park area. During the 2014 Builders Blitz, Habitat built 9 new houses and rehabbed 1 additional house. Along with the Builders Blitz effort, Habitat for Humanity neighborhood outreach program, Rock the Block, helped to rehabilitate 2 blocks of the neighborhood, and if you've been down there, you've seen the change that has had. Habitat owns 25 lots in the neighborhood, with the planned growth to own as many as 50. We've committed to 23 new homes over the next 3 years, and it's an opportunity to significantly impact the neighborhood next to the popular King Science Center magnet school. Habitat for Humanity's focus is on impacting families and neighborhoods by providing an avenue for affordable housing, by providing quality construction and sustainable homes, and continually seeking improvements in construction standards and ultimately the homeowner's experience. Habitat provides ongoing family support critical for family success. Habitat for Humanity has a strong record for performance and impact in the North Omaha community, and it's a trusted partner to the community and the surrounding area. It's a perfect fit for this residential TIF project and will set the groundwork for the future community building in both Omaha, in North and South Omaha. Thank you.
Other proponents, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Edwina Shepard, and I live at 3921 North 22nd Street. And I'd like to say up front, excuse my nervousness.
You're doing fine.
This summer, Habitat renovated 2 existing homes and built 2 new homes on 23rd Street, bordered by Laird and Sprague Streets. Also this summer, the 100th house was demolished by Habitat, located on 21st Street in the same area. This summer, I had the privilege of working with Amanda Brewer, who is the CEO of Habitat of Omaha, and her wonderful staff. We obtained information on contacts for the vacant lots and dwellings on 22nd Street between Laird and Sprague. On 22nd Street, where I live, there are 3 empty lots, 3 owner-occupied dwellings, 1 of which is mine, 5 vacant houses, 1 that was partially destroyed by a fire in 2013 but remains standing, 3 rental properties, 2 of which are so dilapidated you wouldn't believe that people resided in the dwellings, but they do. I'm happy to say that work on 22nd Street will begin the summer of 2015 by Habitat. I myself, as I stated, reside on 22nd Street and have lived in the same house I own for 40 years. I can't tell you how excited I am about the work to be done next year. Also, as you know, this summer, Wadey White, a talented artist, in collaboration with Habitat, painted faces of the past on several homes that were scheduled for demolition in South and North Omaha. Wadey White's work was a tribute to those who once lived in these homes. Members of the neighborhood and community have embraced Wadey White's work, including myself. I would like to preserve my home and neighborhood for the future. Here with me today, I believe she's gone, is my granddaughter Arian, who is 20 months old. She is the future of 22nd Street, where I currently live. The changes that are taking place in the Coons Park area will have a profound impact on the King Science Center. This magnet school, which is adjacent to 22nd Street, will definitely receive a huge curb appeal lift from the improvements that are being done. I would like to also comment on the rental properties in the area. I hope more can be done to ensure that rental properties are better maintained by their owners and tenants. In closing, I hope the council will approve TIF for additional improvements in the Coons Park area. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we heard your granddaughter earlier in the meeting, so we'll count her as a proponent too.
Quite loud.
All right. Any other proponents today?
Carl Tyler, 24th and Lake Street Merchant Association. 2403 North 24th Street. I too would like to support this efforts. Only thing is I don't really know the people in the organization, but I'm going to get to know you. And when I was in Mississippi, down in the Greenville, Mississippi, we built 13 habitat houses. But we was involved in it from the beginning in the room all the way out into the field. And I've come and taken a look at your habitat here, and I wanted to get involved, but I backed away. But you will start to see more of me later on.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Mr. Gray.
Thank you again, Mr. President. This is another project that's in my district that has a great deal of value. One of the things that you will see, you notice here that's a little bit different, is that they're asking for TIF financing because they want to do a much larger, they want to make a larger effort and they want to make a larger splash in a more concentrated area. I've been very thankful to work with Habitat for Humanity. There had been some concerns that I'd raised with them about a couple of issues, most notably a lot of our indigenous community were not necessarily being, not necessarily having the opportunity to take advantage of some of the Habitat housing, and a lot of that had to do with credit issues. And Habitat listened, and they put together a program to address individuals with credit issues. And so they have moved forward with that. They continue to build quality housing. They're consistently concerned about North and South Omaha and continuing the development there. And this is an opportunity. This is a little bit different opportunity. They're asking for TIF financing to do a much larger project, but it's one that's worthwhile. And at the end, I think is going to make a significant difference in that particular neighborhood. So I would ask my colleagues to support it, and I'd make a motion to approve.
Second. Roll call.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Milton?
Yes.
Pauls?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
31 is adopted, 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 70, the public hearing on agenda items 32 to 33 shall be held on the third reading. Ordinance on second reading. Item 34, ordinance providing for the sale of city-owned real property to receive the offer of RH Land Management Company for the Blue Lion Center and additional parcels.
Public hearing on number 34 is today. Proponents, please. Mr. Thiel.
Good afternoon, council members. James Thiel, Omaha Planning Department. The Blue Lion Center was acquired and renovated in the early 1980s. The original project had some problems, and the city did take it back. And for the last 20-some years has used the facility to rent to various organizations who have operated federal employment programs, workforce development. Workforce development, however, relocated in September of 2012. We then offered the property for lease. However, there were some issues associated with leasing the property I want to mention. And one of those is that the high operating costs of the facility are going to require that you have a base tenant, a large tenant who can carry some of the load. It does not break even from an operating point until you're over 75% occupancy, and so that makes it very difficult to lease the space, and I think that was one of the problems. The second issue for the city maintaining the property in terms of a lease operation is that the building systems now are 30 years old. And though the city has maintained and repaired and band-aided the system over that time, you have a roof that's 30 years old. You have heating, air conditioning systems as well as other systems that are 30 years old. So we can anticipate there's a need for renovation of the facility before too long. So we entered into a leasing agreement with our longtime leasing company, Lund Company, in July of 2013. The property was appraised. The city requires, as part of its codes, that offers be above the appraised value of the property. Federal regulations also require that meeting the appraised value on a sale is important to respond to those requirements of those grants. The property was listed. There were a number of showings held. People looked at it. 2 written offers were received. One of those we were unable to, they were below the appraised value. The second offer is the one before you that came in, and we have reviewed it and are making the recommendation to the City Council to accept it. Now, purchase offer was received from RH Land Development. That is a land management company that is associated with the Sherwood Foundation, as has been publicly stated. The offer is for $650,000. However, when we listed the property, and if I could look at the map here, in the red shading is the Blue Line Center, parking lot directly to the south of it, as well as a parking lot to the east that's connected by a walkway through an alley right-of-way that was set up at that time. However, when the offer came in from RH Land Management Company, it included the offer of $650,000 for the property that was listed. It also included 2 other properties, a parking lot behind the Dreamland Plaza that many are familiar with, as well as a vacant lot on Lake Street. Their offer is above the appraised value of the Blue Line Center property, even including the additional parcels. The purchase agreement, by the way, also includes restrictions on the use of the building for liquor sales or as a cocktail lounge for a period of 10 years. However, a restaurant that has liquor sales is permitted if that should come about. The purchaser is an established Omaha foundation with a long-standing involvement in the community. I think that's very important for us to consider as we look at the overall development of the area. They have the financial capacity to renovate and operate the facility. They have the ability to wait for the right tenant mix. The occupancy that they are planning furthers the area development plans for the 24th and Lake Street area. The village development plan provides for the area to become an arts, cultural, entertainment, and commercial districts, and I believe that the plans that they have for the use of the building will meet that objective. With that, I'll answer any questions, and we do have representatives from the listing agent here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents today?
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I called for extra time because the Blue Line Center is very dear to our heart and to our community. And so,
Carl,
yes, sir?
name and address.
Oh, this is what I'm telling you. My name is Carl Tyler. My address at this time is 24th and Lake Street, 2403 North 24th and Lake Street. All right? I'm going to need a little time. And I'm a person who like to be respected, give respect, and be in order. But this is going to take me just a little more time than I usually do. And if I may start, it says, Mr. President, Brother Councilman Ben, other city council members and citizens of Omaha. My name is Carl Tyler, chairman of the 24th and Lake Street Merchants Association. My address is 2403 North 24th and Lake Street. Then it says, in life, in order to grow, you have to make adjustments. When the board of Metro Community Technical College was inaugurated, a gentleman stepped to me when my name was called. And he said, so you are Carl Tyler? And I said, yes, sir, I am. His next statement to me was, and you are Andy Wright's young man. And I said, yes, sir, I am, with all the pride I could master from my inner being. He then took my tassel on my cap, turning from one side to the other, and said, follow me. I will show you how this game is played. This gentleman later invited me to his home for a gathering. As I recall, my wife and I were the only 2 African Americans in the room, and the youngest people in the room. There was other people I didn't know, I was not conscious of them before. Some of them had a lot of stature in the community. One of the men being Warren Buffett. Another person was Mrs. Ann Belchhausen, I hope I'm saying her name right, the heir of Quaker Oats, and also Mrs. B, owner of Nebraska Furniture. I served for 6 years with this gentleman on the board of Metro Tech. And like he told me to follow him, and he was showing me how this game is played. He truly knew the game. He was one of the most honorable and intelligent, intellectual men I have met. To see him in action in the boardroom in the executive session was watching a master craftsman at his work. A true commander, and a true commanding general, a warrior for the people. As he made his points, to watch his command of words and his formulation of paragraphs was like watching a master painter painting a masterpiece. I'm sorry. At the time, we was drafting the college board bylaws and regulations. Long after he had stopped traveling, he attended a meeting in Washington, D.C. I was unable to attend, but fellow board members traveling with him were so impressed with the respect he received in Washington. They said he hadn't been there in a long time, but the staff and others that knew him and had not forgotten him, they showed so much respect and admiration for him, walking ahead of him and opening doors for him. As an elder statesman who spoke the truth, he had moved beyond politics. He was a people's representative, a true gentleman. He was a past mayor of Omaha. He was the 2nd District Congressman from this state. He told me, Carl, you never get angry. You never get even. You get ahead and set the agenda for your people and for your community. And as chairman of North Omaha Community Development, which gained a national reputation, we did just that. We got ahead and we set the agenda. The man I'm talking about was elder statesman, past mayor of Omaha, past congressman, Mr. Glenn Cunningham. I learned so much from him. Place names are not usually named for living people, but they made an exception for Mr. Cunningham, naming Cunningham Lake after him. The reason I took so much time to introduce my comments this way is there are 2 other people I want to mention. First, Mr. Andy Wright, president of the Ideal Improvement Club. Mrs. Willis and others had chosen me to be chairman of North Omaha Community, to be chairman of NOCD. Mrs. Willis, being the spokesperson and the matriarch of Ideal Improvement Club and NOCD, said to Mr. Wright at a meeting, Andy, you are the chair of Ideal Improvement Club. Now we want the chair of NOCD to be this young man. I saw and looked at Mr. Wright's face and his eyes, and I didn't like what I saw, so I responded. The only way I would be chair of North Omaha of NOCD was if Mr. Wright would be my co-chairman. I also used to get a whooping from Mrs. Willis after city council meeting for being too emotional, losing control, and wanting a physical fight. After getting tired of whoopings, I came up with a plan. When she started seeing me lose control, she was to call my name. She would say, Carl, just keep calling Carl. At first, it seemed like she was 1,000 miles away. Then I would begin to hear her. I would turn and look at her with a smile and get myself back under control. Mr. Wright was actually the chairman of North Omaha NOCD for many years. I was his understudy. I was learning from him. He was a man of God. He knew his way around the political arena. I am him as he was me. He was my idol. He worked at Swift & Company. To me, he was a chemist, the head chemist who was known as the pickle man. He pickled every ham that was made in Swift & Company. He was a man who loved his community and his people. He was from the deep rural South. He and others sent home for people, helping them to come to a better life. We used to tease him. About the big wad of money he carried. He said it wasn't his money, but was for the people he helped bring from the Deep South so they could have a better life. He taught me how to love our people and respect them and care for them. Speak up for them when they don't know how to speak for themselves. One of the things he told me endured him to my heart. He said, son, I gave my name Andy. I was called boy. But he was a man, a true man. A man of his community. A man of his people in his community. Once he told me he was downtown at City Hall, and he overheard somebody bad-mouthing me, would he been and Carl Christensen at to a city councilman, a city council member. He intervened, asked him, did I hear you talking about my boys? The council member who was a friend of Mr. Wright asked him, Andy, do you know these young men? Mr. Wright responded, those are my boys. He and the council member left together, leaving the person standing there. After much prayer and meditation, I have no problem with the Blue Line Center being sold to RH and Management Company, LLC, because my understanding is this company is connected with Warren Buffett and his family, and he is known as a man of integrity and a man who cares about his city. One of the things I'm concerned about is people who say they represent this community, and people of this who say they represent this community, and people of this community when they don't. My reason for making this statement is this: the community once owned a bank, the community bank at 52nd and Ames Street in North Omaha, now Wells Fargo, the banking company with a history of dehumanizing black African Americans, and the Franklin Credit Union that was at 33rd and Franklin, both of which are no longer in existence. One of the main reasons for NOCD no longer existing is that I personally trusted some people from both of these institutions who betrayed the trust of NOCD and its community. Some of these same people now want to control the Blue Line Center. I feel if this corporation will be true to its word and do what it says it will, the Blue Line Center will be in safe hands. They say that they are going to put small businesses back in the building. It will help regenerate the area of 24th and Lake Street as an economic base for the NOCD community, and I'm all for that. This corner, this area, was a starting point for reparations and rebuilding of our Black Wall Street. The Blue Line Center was never to be sold. $650,000 is no money compared to the $300 million that NOCD area in North Omaha has contributed to this city, plus the $49 trillion that is owed to all the poor people and middle-class working people in this country that has been stolen and hidden away. The letter from the Planning Department states, the Blue Line Center was used for the offices of job training service organizations serving low and moderate income people until 2012. This is not accurate information. The Blue Line Center was developed for small businesses and an anchor for our economic development at 24th and Lake Street, not for service organizations. The letter also says the city leasing agent was to rent this facility. At this time, we will not ask for the leasing agent's name. This, too, is misleading. It was never advertised in the black community for rent or sale. I know of several people who were interested in purchasing the Blue Line Center and did not know it was for sale. One other issue for me personally is if the company can be persuaded, I would personally recommend that they use my brother, Marty Schukert, as a spokesperson and a consultant for the redevelopment of the Blue Line Center. Just because someone pays or buys something don't mean they own it. We are a people who was once sold and paid for, but we was never spiritually owned. My great-grandmother and other family members were so-called slaves, sold and paid for, making me the third generation from the auction block. I have an uncle who is 94 years old. He tells the story of my family about his Uncle Henry, his father's brother, saying, "That looked like Uncle Henry. Yonder come Uncle Henry." And they all ran to him. At the time, he was almost 90 years old. He had been sold when he was 19 years old. He had lost one eye, but he made it back home. As I said, just because you buy something don't mean you own it. When I first heard that the Blue Line Center was sold, it took the wind out of me. My emotion was all pain. Over the days after the community meeting with the mayor, which was one of the best in a long time because the people spoke, and personally, my respect for her greatly increased. After much prayer and meditation, I'm at peace with this decision. It seems like the ancestors are telling me it's all right. You must understand, the Blue Line Center, the Blue Line was much, much more than a building. To us, the young people of that time, it was a monument to our elders of North Omaha for their past work, and to let them know it was a job well done. The blue stands for divine freedom, and the lion stands for the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered and proven himself worthy. Matthew 5, verse 5. As the elders had conquered and proven themselves worthy, most of them were people from Acts 4:13. They were bold, uneducated, non-professional, but they had been with and was followers of Jesus. The elders was like the men of King David in 2 Samuel 10, verse 9 to 12, when David's commander Joab realized that he would have to fight on two fronts. He selected his best fighters in his army, placing them under his personal command, and took them out to fight the Syrians in the field. He left the rest of his army to his brother, who was to attack the city, saying, if I need assistance against the Syrian, come and help. And if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I will come and help. I will come and help you. Courage. We must really act like men today if we are going to save our people and the city of our God. May Yahweh's will be done. Let me end this by saying, Fannie Lou Hamer is my spiritual political mother. Malcolm X is my spiritual political father. Ella Baker is my spiritual political aunt. Dr. Martin Luther King is my spiritual political uncle. President John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy are true friends and are Irish family members. All my skin folks are not my kin folks, and all my kin folks are not my skin folks. In every Negro, there's a potential righteous black man, a true son of God, a true master of love, a Christ. In every white man, there's a potential for a true righteous European, a true son of God, a true master of love and truth, a Christ. We know that the circle is a symbol of the perfect man, and 7 is the number of the perfect man, and the Logos is the perfect word. That's what create, that's what destroy, and that's what regenerate. We, the people of North Omaha, we are the Logos of the Holy One, God, the circle of the human race, the 7th of time. We say no human can enter the light till they have found themselves. We say, go forth, search till you have found your inner soul, your I am, your divine inner self, your divine inner conscience. We, the people of North Omaha, are people of integrity, loyalty, and commitment, first to God, then to ourselves. than to our community. We are a people who believe in respectability, responsibility, accountability, credibility, reliability, and workability. Some people say we are not, but we know who we are, and we know to whom we belong. Love, truth, peace, generosity, kindness, courage, bravery, vision, and wisdom. Is wisdom, a perfect balance of love and truth. Those are the codes we try to live by. All we ask is to be treated fairly. We are people who believe in respect, and we believe in the right to disagree respectfully with anyone. We hear that everybody is packing these days. We too are packing. Our weapons are deadly, destroying, killing weapons. Our weapons are called love and truth. Love kills and destroys all hate and whatever goes with it. Truth kills and destroys all lies and whatever goes with it. We believe in working with anybody who wants to work with us. We believe in talking with anyone who wants to talk with us. But we don't want anyone to work for us without working with us. We don't want anyone to speak for us without speaking with us. We know there are many problems in our community, but we know working together we can solve them, dealing in truth and righteousness. I'm in favor of the Blue Line Center being sold. I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
And
Other proponents, please.
Can I give this to the...
Please.
So that everybody can copy it?
Very nice, brother.
Thank you.
Greetings, councilmen and women. My name is James Calloway, Sr., 625 North 40th Street, Omaha, Nebraska. I appeared before the council several weeks ago on a matter that involved the Great Plains Black History Museum. Now I come before the council to speak in favor of the sale of the Blue Line Center to people that the City Planning Department and the city know will do a good job with the interests of the community at hand. One of the things I'm excited about is that there's mention that the new owners of the property are interested in historic preservation and that there will be some historical and cultural activity in the building, which fits perfectly with the plan that a group I'm associated with has in mind. We have a newly formed organization. It's not considered nonprofit yet, called the Omaha Black History Museum. Our plan still remains to rehabilitate the building at 2213 Lake Street. While that plan moves forward, and if we're successful, it's going to take over a year to rehabilitate that building. We look forward to negotiating with the new owners to have a presence in the Blue Line Center while this rehabilitation takes place. We don't want a long period of time to go by without some important information being relayed to our young adults and older adults, actually. And we find the Blue Line Center a perfect location in the center and the heart of the community to share our history. Many of you may know that some years back, current Mayor Hal Dobb had allocated a very nice amount of space in the Blue Line Center for the Great Plains Black History Museum to operate, and it was a perfect match. But it was shortly after that that it was determined that workforce would come in, and so we had to leave. So I'll make it short. I'm greatly in favor of this. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to rehabilitate that area, to encourage more involvement at 24th and Lake Street, the heart of the community. And I look forward to meeting with the representatives who are going to be managing the property to possibly come up with a plan to have a Black History Museum in that facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents, please. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents?
Hello, I'm Houston McHale, the president of North Omaha Contractors Alliance. I'm at 2505 North 24th Street, Suite 409A. After hearing the gentleman just speak, at first, I was a little against it because I'm wondering if the city's plan from now 20 to 2025 and on, is it going to be anything for us black men as far as contractors or entrepreneurs, Are we going to be able to own anything up and along and down 24th Street, own and operate it from some of my constituents that live around the area? That's pretty much what I wanted to ask, but he choked me up, both of them actually, since they was in favor. Just can we have some minority participation in this remodeling, this selling, this bidding, this buying, and remodeling? That's all I would like to ask. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Other opponents today?
Hi, my name is Minister Charles W. Johnson. I reside at 2505 Lake Street. My concern is, like Brother Houston just said, it seems as though they're just coming in and just swooping down the black community, and those who live in that community, the voices are being shut down. Is that we don't even have a voice. Just like the Blue Line. We wasn't even notified that it was even getting shut down. All we did was drove down the block one day and bam, the Blue Line was gone. Just like the bank on 30th and Ames. Nobody had no idea in the community that that bank was even closed. You just went by there and bam, the door locked on it. The black community does have a voice, but it seems like it's being ignored. And this is not just on one or two things. It seems like we just being ignored on everything in the black community, and it seems like everybody that's making the changes and doing all the things in the black community doesn't even live there, nor are they even black. So my concern is, when do we have a voice? Because we the ones that live in there, and we the ones that should have been able to have some voice, especially on the Blue Line. When y'all shut the Blue Line down, y'all took a lot away from the community. At least they had a place to go and a place to study, a place to get on computers. Now they have nothing. So I'm just saying, and I don't want to take up a lot of space and time, but all I'm saying is, when you start making your plans, start involving the black community who lives there instead of all the outsiders that don't come through there, don't live there, and their only purpose is business, making money. Is with that I close.
Thank you. Other opponents, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Ernest White, 5135 North 137th Avenue. I'm not for or against. I just think that we should take pause and have community input in areas so culturally important to that community, 24th and Lake. So I don't feel one way or another. I just think we didn't have enough community input, and that we should take pause at areas so important to the rich cultural heritage of that community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. It seems like it's the day for the District 2 today. Jim, if you could come to the mic just for a second for me, because yeah, I think you can take
James
that down.
Steele, City Planning.
Yeah, I think you can take that down. I don't need to have that up. Jim, when the discussions were going on about this, and there was a redevelopment plan or a master plan that was envisioned by the village concept, and there were certain ideas or efforts to go on in several of the properties on 24th Street, not just the Blue Line Center, but the Blue Line Center was one of those centerpieces, and one of the concerns was that there be commercial, that there be opportunity for nonprofit associations to be housed in that building along with an anchor tenant. And I know one of the ones that is being talked about is the Union Art Space taking up some of that area. But to the best of your knowledge, is the intent of the purchaser to follow pretty much along the same guidelines as what the village concept was talking about?
Yes, in talking with the foundation, they're very familiar with the village development plan, and they believe that it's important to further that plan, looking at it as a historical, cultural, arts area together with retail. So I think that all of the items in terms of the redevelopment, parts I should say, of the redevelopment concept fit in with their plans for the Blue Line Center.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question that I have for you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I think there are a couple of things that were said today that I think are that are important to reflect on and to remember. One is, I think Mr. White said it accurately. I think there probably should have been a little bit more community involvement in this particular area, but you know, at the end of the day, I think we have a purchaser who is going to do essentially what the village concept called for in the first place to be done. And so, and I think there are opportunities down the road for potential ownership by minority or African American community members. Right now, we have a purchaser who has the ability to hold on and wait for the appropriate tenants as called for by the village concept and others. They have the ability to renovate in an appropriate way so it is long-standing. I think this is an opportunity that we need to take advantage of, and I think the purchase. I think we ought to engage in the purchase going forward. I think this is a good effort. I think this is a good project, and I think the future holds very well because now we have someone that is willing to create an anchor on 24th and Lake Street to help build some of the other aspects of that area as well. So I'd be supportive of this, and next week when the vote comes, I'll be supporting it as well. There's some things that I hope to negotiate a little later on, but right now I think conceptually this is really the best step forward for to develop 24th and Lake Street and keep the cultural significance of the African American community as well as others at stake in this particular effort. So I'm supportive, and but I do think Mr. White has a point in that there should have been a little bit more discussion, but we're past that now, and hopefully in the future we'll take that advice and make sure that the community is much more informed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson. Only if a council member calls you up, because public hearing is closed. Mr. Thompson has the floor.
Thank you. I, too, am optimistic about what could happen. I don't claim to speak for the buyer, but I do know that the buyer is not one of those individuals that try to keep minorities beholden to them. There are people like that, where they will come in and become the great white father or the great white mother and then have you come to them all the time for their little sustenance. But in this case, I don't believe that's what's happening. I believe that the buyer is truly wanting to empower the community, and they understand that there might have to be some input input on the front end side of it. But I believe ultimately, when it's said and done, the long term, that the buyer will try their best to empower the community and individuals in the community, because these buyers are not about gentrification, and they're not about trying to make themselves into, all white gods that the, black man follows. Although that does happen a lot, I don't think that this case that's the way. So even though there wasn't enough involvement by North Omaha, I think in the end, this product will be very well received, and that there will be community ownership of it. That's just my opinion, but that's the reason why I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerem.
Yeah, my light was blinking so fast it was making me dizzy. It seemed like it was going faster than normal. I see, Mr. Thiel, that the funds that were used to acquire the Blue Lion Center were CDBG Federal Community Development Block Grant funds. That's correct?
James Thiel, Planning Department. That's correct. That is CDBG or Community Development Block Grant funds.
And the funds received from the sale to RH Land Management Company will have to go back into the city's account of CDBG funds, correct?
That is correct, to be used for those activities allowable under the Community Development Block Grant Program.
And a part of those
funds.
Yeah, and a part of those CDBG permissible fund expenditures are for economic development, right?
That's correct.
What I hear the community saying today, North Omaha, is that they would like a voice, more of a voice, in what is happening in the community. And it seems to me that out of the hard feelings that some feel about not being included enough in this decision, perhaps the proceeds that are coming back in that could be used to be reinvested back into the community would allow the opportunity for you and the city to include the community in a forum for what economic development or CDBG projects they might have interest in the North Omaha community. Would you agree?
Yes, Councilman. Every year we have a block grant process that has public hearings and focus groups. I think that would be very good to have additional community input.
So what can you tell the people who came here to testify today about the outreach that you'll undertake or your department will undertake to include them in the process for turning the $650,000 or whatever net proceeds are received after the expenses for closing on the transaction are paid, that these funds can be reinvested, maybe even in the 24th and Lake area, in a way that the community expresses it wants them reinvested and that the city can support within the confines of that CDBG system? How will they know when and where and how to participate in this process so that they have a voice?
Well, when we do have public hearings, they are advertised. However, what I encourage everybody to do, if I don't already have your name and email address, I would like that to make sure you're included in our mailing list and so that we can involve you in focus groups as well as the public hearings.
So NOCD, the NONA, NOCA, the various stakeholder groups that perhaps you already have contact information for, will they also get notice of this process?
Yes, there is, and again, I really would appreciate if they either will stay around or send me a quick email to make sure we do have you on our list. I believe some of you we do, but I don't think we have all of you.
Well, just to make sure that we don't lose anybody's contact information, maybe if we can have someone who's here today from your staff maybe hang out in the back so we can get the contact information from these people, because it seems like this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity moving forward to correct or improve, whatever your vantage point may be, the communication system we have so that the community, whether it's this community on this issue or other communities on other issues, has a greater sense that their voice is heard, it matters, and that they're helping determine the future of their neighborhood and their community. And with your assurances that you'll do that, I can't wait to see what the community says it could use the $650,000 for to reinvest in.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Yeah, just one brief comment, because my colleague, Councilmember Jerem, made a very good point about communication. I found out about this a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, through the grapevine. I mean, I was never officially told until I started asking the question. So that's why I said what Mr. White says is important, what our Councilmember Jerem says is important. There was a breakdown in communication in this particular instance, in that the council member in that area had to ferret out the information as opposed to being told about it. So in the future, I hope that communication breakdown doesn't occur again.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. No further lights. Thank you for your testimony. Next item, please.
Item 35, ordinance approving a redevelopment tax and financing redevelopment agreement with Zone 5 to implement the Exarban Village Zone 5 Phase 3 tax and financing redevelopment project plan located northeast Mercy Road and Exarban Drive.
Public hearing on number 35 is today. Proponents, Ms. Hadley.
Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 36, ordinance to rescind ordinance number 37588, which approved the tax and financing redevelopment project agreement with the Wall Street Tower, Omaha, for the redevelopment of the former Union Pacific headquarters building at 1416 Dodge Street.
Public hearing on number 36 is today. Proponents, please.
Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer any questions you may have.
Any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 37, orders to approve the acceptance and authorized distribution of the project's Safe Neighborhoods Grant to provide funding to reduce gun and gang violence in Omaha and neighboring communities.
Public hearing on number 37 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 38, ordinance to approve an interlocal agreement between Douglas County and the city with the City Police Department Crime Lab to provide certain crime lab services for Douglas County and Douglas County to provide certain crime lab services for the City of Omaha.
Public hearing on number 38 is today. Proponents, please. Captain Newman.
Captain Kerry Newman, Omaha Police Department. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Any opponents today? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
Mr. Bielik. No slight on you, Captain, but we have a unique bird in the room today. Somebody who's been on both sides of the coin. So, working in your former life, Deputy Sheriff of Douglas County, now Chief of Staff to the Mayor and the City, working closely with the Chief. The Chief came in and talked to the Public Safety Committee about if we ever want a full merger, you have to do what we're doing here today first, while preserving the integrity of the chain of command and all the other things that go along with it. But in a nutshell, can you tell us from your perspective in 3 minutes or less what this is, where it takes us, and why it's the best thing to do?
Good afternoon, council members. Marty Bielik, the mayor's office. This has actually been something that has been discussed probably over the last 10 or 15 years, off and on, depending on who the elected officials are and who took an interest in it. And actually, the players have changed over the years. The chief is different. The mayor's different. The plan is all lined up just about right. This time around, we had an easy time with the discussions. It was originally brought up, I believe, by County Board Member Mike Boyle, who just simply, having seen me at this very podium at a County Board meeting, says, why don't you guys merge the crime lab? You did it with 911. The efficiencies were increased. You could do something similar with the crime lab. Why don't you do it? So we started thinking about it. It came up again. And off and on, we realized that there were some distinct advantages by doing this. And with the last elections and Todd Schmatter in place and myself in the mayor's office, we were able to make some progress, and that's why we're here today. Now, would you also like me to talk a little bit about the specifics of the agreement?
Just why this is the right thing to do at this time. What we're doing, why it's the best thing to do.
There's probably, in my opinion, there's two reasons why we should seriously consider this. One is that recently the U.S. Department of Justice had a study done, and they talked about some scandals occurred in crime labs throughout the country, and it was decided that best practices dictate that crime labs should be accredited. So the Sheriff's Office recognized that a couple of years ago and renovated a facility out at the Fitzgerald home, which is on 56 Maple. It's an old building that's been renovated to be accredited. So a crime lab needs to be designed around accreditation criteria. So that's being done. The crime lab that's currently being used, the private crime lab in Omaha that the Omaha Police Department is using, is not accredited. I don't believe there is an effort underway to have it become accredited. So if the Department of Justice ever dictates that accreditation should occur, then we're gonna have to screw around to meet the requirement. The other big advantage, I believe, maybe biggest of all, is just simply the fact that the way it works right now is you have a Sheriff's Crime Lab located 156 Maple Street. You have the Omaha Police Crime Lab located downtown. And it could be possible where there's a car accident which occurs out in Elkhorn. It's personal injury. It requires a crime lab response. But it's Omaha, so they have to travel all the way across town to get there. And about 30 minutes through their journey, they're going to drive right by the Sheriff's Office, which has a crime lab that could respond to that much more easily. So it's just more efficient to just dispatch the crime lab is in the best position to handle a call based on not only proximity,
but also on availability. So, for example, if the Omaha Police's crime lab is tied up at a shooting, let's say, somewhere in the eastern part of the county, and then they have another call out in the western part of the county, they're not available right away, let the sheriff's office handle it, and vice versa. If the sheriff's office is busy, maybe the Omaha Police crime lab could assist somewhere with the crime scene that they have out in West Omaha. To me, those are the big driving factors.
In terms of the cost, as I understand from the chief, there's about, $135,000 that'll be paid from the city to the county for certain lab.
That's true.
But as I also understand from the chief, he will have a reduction in corresponding expenses from his budget, maybe not to that level, but for the costs that he has to pay to contract out those services. And the fire division and the arson also contracts out expenses for lab services that their line item will actually benefit from that too. Do you want to talk about the economic costs of this versus the benefits for a minute?
Yes. The county's crime lab is going to be offering several services that the private lab doesn't offer now. They're going to be offering analyzing controlled substances. Now, the private lab does that as well, but the county's crime lab will also analyze trace evidence. Trace evidence is fiber, hair, paint samples, for example. So those items will be analyzed at the county's crime lab. They're not analyzed at the private lab currently. Also, fire debris evidence will be analyzed in Douglas County, not analyzed at the private lab currently. And also just the fact that accreditation is coming and there's a cost associated with that. If you add that all together, I think that more than makes up for the difference in cost.
The other thing that I don't think has been addressed at all in terms of addressing the economics of this is the forfeiture funds availability that the county has in terms of improving the lab infrastructure, that the city of Omaha does not have to invest general funds to develop into its own lab. And as I understand the history of the Douglas County Crime Lab, there is an opportunity from time to time to have the availability of drug forfeiture funds to assist in that process.
Well, even though I hadn't thought about it in this particular context, you're exactly right. I can tell you that over the last 5 or 10 years, the Sheriff's Office Canine Interdiction Unit has been very successful in interdicting drug dealers on the interstate. Oftentimes, that means large drug seizures. If the car's going the other way, it means large seizures, forfeitures of cash money that the federal government will award to us after it's been vetted in federal district court. And then at one point, the Sheriff's Office decided that they would use about $4 million of that money to renovate the Fitzgerald home, and that's just exactly what we did at the time. As got architects, designed the facility as a lab from the ground up, and at no cost to the taxpayers.
And those haven't even been factored into the economic cost benefits.
That's true.
But if you factor those in and future forfeitures that can be used to renovate or improve or enhance the lab or acquire equipment going forward, that hasn't been factored in either.
No, that's true.
So I thank you, Mr. Bielik.
Okay.
To me, this is something that I've talked about in public forum as something we need to do. If there ever is going to be a full-blown merger, this is the step you have to take to get there. Right now, we're sharing services. They're sharing services that they both feel that there's competencies in, that mutually can benefit from them. The county attorney is an advocate for helping him do what he does in prosecuting cases. He's asking for this. And the economic benefits that and the cost-benefit analysis that have been performed, I think, have been so conservative that they've overlooked some of the huge numbers that are, when you put those into the equation, make this an economically wise thing to do as well. So I applaud the efforts that you've taken, that those have helped you do this, the county attorney, the sheriff, chief, and the staff that worked on this, because it's something that moves the ball down the road and I think will help both agencies and the county attorney do what they do.
Thank you. I had a couple follow-up question just along the same lines that Councilman Jerem was discussing there, Mr. Bielik, if you can. Yeah. So I agree. This has been discussed for so long, it kind of took on the nomer of merger. But really what we have today is not a merger. I would describe it also as a shared services agreement, an interlocal agreement that does that. But regardless of what you call it, the reasons to do that are if you have more efficient services or if you save money, or ideally both. So in our briefing with the chief, I agree, he explained very well the efficiencies that will be achieved through some of this and some of the services with the sheriff and the crime lab and how that works. In his remarks, though, he also indicated it would cost probably about $30,000 more per year from his perspective. But I think what you just said was from the larger perspective, you see other cost savings that could occur that would offset that. Is that correct?
Marty Bielik, Mayor's Office, that's exactly right. They're spending more money than they were spending a certain amount of money with the private lab. They'll be spending a little bit more money with the sheriff's office, but they'll be getting more services for that same amount of money.
Okay. And you think that's probably a wash, or is it savings, or is it a wash, or more money?
It's a little bit hard to measure. I think I'll call it a wash financially, but I'm not going to call it a wash in terms of efficiencies. I'm going to call that a big gain for everybody in Douglas County, both the city of Omaha and outside.
Okay. And so I understand that, and I understand definitely the perspective of the efficiencies and why that makes sense. And so I agree with Councilman Jerem's remarks in that regard. And I also agree with the chief's notion that this is a first step that has to be taken if we pursue a full merger of this someday. And when asked that question, the chief said that's what he said, and he said this doesn't shut the door on that possibility going forward. Would you agree that this isn't the end of the line? This could be a first step towards an actual merger, if it works well?
I would, I'm going to give you a short answer is yes. I'm going to always be in favor of exploring new ideas for efficiencies, for cost savings. You'd be foolish not to think that way in local government. But having said that, I will also tell you that all along we've been thinking about this. We're calling it a cooperative agreement right now, but we also looked at this in more drastic terms of merger, merging people, merging governments, and there was disadvantages in doing that, and we knew that up front, or we knew that was a possibility because we saw all of that when we merged the 911 centers, the city and county. And to be more specific, what I mean by that is in the case of the 911 merger, what happened is the council at the time heard from the employees, and they all felt like they were being compromised somewhat on both sides, both the city and county employees. What they ended up doing is saying, okay, let's look at your contracts and let's take the best terms from each. So if the city employee got the best wages, the merged 911 center got those wages. If the county employees had the best prescription drug benefits, so they took those prescription drug benefits and applied them to everyone that worked in this new combined merged 911 center. So at the end of the day, it became a little bit more costly to merge that way at the time. However, again, you saw this, you got a return on that investment in terms of efficiency, because now all of a sudden you only had to have one radio system, you only had to have one computer-aided dispatch system, you only had to, it was easier to maintain mobile data computers in the fire and police apparatus because you had one dispatch center that was sort of the focal point for IT now, where before there were two separate entities, separate maintenance agreements which had costs associated with them. So the real advantage that you gain is through efficiencies. And what we thought with respect to the crime lab is, well, maybe we don't need to suffer through the full merger right now and try to figure out how we're going to attain parity for all the employees at an expense, but instead we'll let the employees keep their city or county identities, and those employees, by the way, would need to respond to crime scenes, whether they be city or county, and that's why we did it that way, so that even though they'll retain their city-county identity, they'll each respond to the other's calls when need be, so you gain the efficiency that way without the additional cost. Is that all right?
Yeah, so complexities for sure, but you aren't shutting the door on an actual merger of the crime lab in the future?
No, if there's a way to do that and benefit further, boy, I'll be right there to help in any way I can.
Okay, thank you. And then on the bigger picture too, or the bigger scale, are we also considering other actual or functional mergers of city and county government in areas other than crime lab?
Yes. There's always talk about merging in some way or another law enforcement entities. That's a horribly complex problem, and I really am not in a position to say anything more about that other than I'm open to all possibilities. We're also aware of the fact that there's some possibilities for a merger. We've already done the city-county merger here. There's also possibilities for there's already a 911 merger here in Omaha. Now there's a possibility of doing a Douglas County, Sarpy County 911 merger. I see huge efficiencies there for the same reasons I had just mentioned about the efficiencies that came from our own merger. And also convention center and visitor bureaus, they talk about merging those operations across county lines, Sarpy County, even Potawatomi County in that particular case. So those are just some of the things that I've discussed either since I've been in the mayor's office or merger possibilities that I've been involved with over the last maybe 10 or 15 years, just being in county government or city.
Okay, thanks. I would just say I think you'd find support on the city council to keep moving those directions when it saves money and has efficiencies, and there's surely additional opportunities to do that between what city government does and what county government does in all its respects. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Bielik, just for clarification, when you say efficiencies, perhaps these two ways to define it. Number one, maybe if you don't save money, you could, one of the efficiencies is that it could be done quicker. Is that correct?
Yes, exact. Quicker or better.
And
somehow better otherwise, maybe.
And then with less potential mistakes.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And then when we're talking about partial mergers, functional mergers versus full merger, the fact that you are not closing the door to it doesn't necessarily mean that this step means that the administration will definitely do full merger. We're just saying that this is just a positive step in and of itself, not necessarily connected to anything else. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay, thank you.
No further lights. Next item.
Item number 39, ordinance approving the 13th supplemental agreement amongst the city, Douglas County, and the Omaha Douglas Building Commission to provide issuance of new bonds for renovation and reconstruction at the Civic Center and Hall of Justice. A is an amendment of the whole, setting the bonds at $15 million.
Public hearing on number 39 is today. Proponents, please. General Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Paul Cohen, Administrator, Omaha Douglas Public Building Commission. Here today to present to you our proposal to amend the 13th to amend the lease agreement by the 13th supplemental agreement, which will provide for up to $15 million bond issue for the purpose of correcting a long-standing problem over in the county courthouse for the offices of the city prosecutor, solving a long list of security and space problems on the second and third floors of that building, along with, those are the two premier parts of this, along with changing an 87-year-old air handling unit that has outlived its useful life and can no longer provide sufficient heating and air conditioning on about 2.5 floors of that facility. Those two items alone represent close to $10 million in improvements, though we're beginning to see as we go through the engineering phase those prices beginning to come down. In addition, there are a pretty long list of infrastructure items that we would like to go about fixing over the next 3 years, the life of the bond, or the life of the that we have to spend the money for the bond. The bond's a 15-year bond, and the total comes to around $15 million. If it comes in less than that, we'll spend less or use it for other projects. Be happy to answer any specific questions you might have about this proposal.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Ms. Melton.
And I know we spoke about this kind of at length this morning, but I just wanted to make sure that the public knew a lot of the areas that we're talking about that need to be renovated and redone needed to be done for quite some time, but they aren't necessarily open to the public. And so I think that that's important. When you come down, you see this beautiful rotunda on the second floor, and you think, well, this is beautiful. Why do we need to do anything? Well, that's not the areas that we're talking about. And so I do think and this is something that the city and the county are both going to benefit from, because the sheriffs are, I mean, it's a problem with security of both the sheriffs, and then the sheriffs trying to keep the public safe, and then the sheriffs trying to keep our city prosecutors safe while they're transporting prisoners directly in front of the prosecutors' individual offices. Literally almost, prosecutors are going shoulder to shoulder with inmates that are in cuffs that the sheriffs are trying to transport. And that's something that the public doesn't see, and it's been going on. I started in this courthouse over 10 years ago, and that's how it was, so I'm longer than that. Long as you've been here? Over 20 years. And some of the conditions I think that we have for the prosecutors with the ceiling, there's black mold, there's significant leaking where the sheriffs sit, and that's just on the second floor. So there are some significant improvements. I think that Moyer and Associates did a good job at laying out what needs to be done in the most cost-effective way, and then how we can redo sixth floor, which even after we do this, it still remains a problem, because really our courthouse is just kind of busting at the seams. We need another juvenile court judge, and really we don't have the space for a juvenile court judge without displacing our juvenile county attorneys. So then we don't have a place to put them. So again, I think that this will definitely help with security if we can put a courtroom up there outside of where the inmates are held. Up on the top floor, it will eliminate transporting, at least for the sheriffs, transporting them throughout the courthouse and all over the courthouse. So that helps both for the safety of the people that work in the courthouse and the public when they're coming in to pay a parking ticket or something of that nature. You know, you're walking past some dangerous folks. Not all of them, but some of them are. So I definitely think this is needed for the public. So I know the vote's not until next week. I know Mr. Gray serves on the commission with me, and this is something we both really agree upon. The bond was higher. We were looking for potentially a place where we could house a juvenile justice center. It doesn't look like that's going to pan out at this time, but I do think in the future it's something that we're going to need to be thinking about. But I'm okay with taking this first step and at least making sure the public is safe, and we renovate some of the things in our courthouse. And the key to this is that nobody's taxes are being raised. This is a bond that's being issued, and nobody has to pay any additional amounts. We're simply taking a little bit more off our levy. Taxes won't go up until we hit 1.7. This bond we're at 1.5. Is that correct, Paul? So we still even have room. Not that I want to spend that money, but I think that's important for the taxpayers to know that there will not be any increase on their property taxes for this bond. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I've spoken more today than I have in the last 5 council meetings. But anyway, I agree with Councilmember Melton. This is sorely needed. It's been sorely needed for a long time. But I also want to say a couple of other things. Number one, I want to take the opportunity to thank Paul Cohen and his staff, because they continue to hold the line on spending. They continue to be frugal about what they do. They spend what is absolutely necessary to spend and get the job done. But Mr. Cohen also knows my feelings that right now what it looks like we're doing over at the courthouse is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic if we don't do some of these things. And I think at some point we really have to consider a juvenile justice center, whether we build one, I don't know that we can put one over there anymore, but we've got to do some things to make it safer for the public, safer for our law enforcement, both sheriff and police, and just a better system of operation for, not only those folks, but attorneys and others, and the public that goes through there. So highly supportive of this. Think it's overdue. Still think we've got a lot of work that needs to happen, but this is a good next step to provide additional safety and additional comfort for those who have to work over there on a daily basis. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Yes, I too am a supporter. I was one of the ones that took a tour of the place, and it was crowded. It was very crowded, and I was a little bit surprised at how close we were to the inmates. In fact, me and one inmate brushed up against one another. It was a friendly one. It almost looked like it was kind of a football, chest bump or something, but it surprised me that it's that close of a quarters. And also I noticed the water damage and the mold. And so when I was able to see it, then the light went off. It clicked in my head. What really sold me was one of the administrative workers there showed me her damaged pinky finger. And she got it because there was a scuffle up there. And she got into the middle of the scuffle, and her finger got damaged pretty bad. So it became pretty, apparent to me that this is more than just window dressing. This is a real issue that has to be addressed. So
that was right outside of one of the prosecutor's offices. He was sitting in her office trying to work.
So it was just clear to me that it's tight quarters up there, and we've got to do a better job of providing safety and just common sense. I agree that there needs to be a courtroom up on that floor, because the transportation between floors, it looks to me a little goofy. So just for the record, I'm supporting it.
Thanks, and I agree too. I was on the tour with Councilman Thompson and guided by Councilmember Melton there, and we appreciated that insights of the facility there, and I think the need's quite apparent as well. Mr. Jerem.
Well, maybe because my name begins with a C, I'm going to talk about the 3 C's on why I support this. I also happen to, like Councilmember Melton, go over there quite frequently in my law practice, and the crowding. The crowding is something that the public can see. People cannot fit in the courtrooms. There are days where the sheriff's deputies are literally calling people in from the hall as their names are being called because there's just not enough room for people in the courtrooms. Setting aside the commentary is that that business is busy these days in our city, and that's sad, but it's the fact that the crowding over there is incredible. That'll be addressed in this bond issue. The conditions that the people who work in that environment have to put up with, the public that is interacting in that environment, whether you're an accused, a victim, a witness, or what have you, the conditions over there are really poor. The ceilings are falling in, and I can think of courtroom 27. The conditions have been over there for a while, up on the ceiling. On the 3rd floor, back where they do the probate, and Judge Marcuzzo has his courtroom. I think you're now calling them 332 and 3. They used to be just 32, and I have to get used to the new numbers. Look up at the ceiling there, the water damage. So the conditions are abysmal, and they need to be addressed. But the third thing, and I'm not going to be shy about this, is that the bond issue does not address the significant needs for consolidation in the juvenile justice system, and the opportunity that exists that I believe should be pointed out to consolidate the juvenile justice system where all of the other juvenile justice services are provided, whether they be the Juvenile Assessment Center over on the 42nd and Woolworth campus between Woolworth and Pacific. The Juvenile Detention Center is over there. And to me, I just feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say there's an opportunity to consolidate services in a location that has room where other juvenile justice services are being administered in this county. So as we go forward with this, and I intend to support it, I would hope that the Commission and the fine people who work in that, including our 2 colleagues, would consider the opportunity to consolidate in that campus a new juvenile justice center for the judges to be over there with the other services that are provided. So those are my 3 C's. General, you got out of your chair. So what say you?
I think just for, excuse me, Paul Cohen, Administrator, Public Building Commission, I just wanted to say that your comments, Mr. Chair, were discussed at great length at the county board meeting this morning. And that the need to do something with juvenile justice, whether it be on the 6th floor or in some other building, was underlined by the county board this morning, and they intend to go forward with that. The Building Commission would be happy to assist in that regard, but we do have limited resources. And to build an entire new facility on another campus somewhere probably exceeds our ability because of the 1.7 cent cap. That's all we get. But there are maybe other ways. We're going to investigate that and work with the county to address that issue, because the juvenile justice system space on the 6th floor of the courthouse is unsustainable. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. Paul, could I have I have not had the opportunity to be shown the place that Councilwoman Melton says. Have we ever had TV there? Have they taken it to look at seeing how bad this area is?
In fact, as late as last week, Channel 7 accompanied Captain Wayne Hudson through that area, and it was pretty clear they did a good job, and Captain Hudson did an excellent job of pointing out the issues that were there. But I think as Commissioner, or as Councilmember Melton, I got to remember where I am all the time. As Councilmember Melton said, where you stand on this issue is a function of where you sit. If you sit in one of those offices of the city prosecutor, or you are a judge whose chambers are in that hallway adjacent to the holding cells, you get it. If you're a general member of the public who comes down and pays a traffic ticket, the closest you get is seeing the orange-suited inmate walking across the rotunda, which is a horrible situation to have. We've talked about it. This situation has existed when Marty Convoy was the city prosecutor. We talked about it. Mr. Kratz has been a frequent caller to our office every year that we go through the capital improvement program to try and identify this. We wrestled with it for almost 3 years of finding a satisfactory solution, and this is it. Are there extensive photographs or coverage by the media for this area? There has not been up until last week when they took a camera through it to see it.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
I heard you talk about the letter C, and not to discredit anything of that, but see, to me, it's the letter E. We wouldn't be dealing with lots of these issues if we actually had probably even a better education system. These kids and young adults are there for many reasons because of their inability to probably get a good education. So that's my comment to your C's. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights?
Item number 40 is bid rejection. Foss Construction Incorporated appeals the rejection to bid of August 27, 2014 for OPW 52634.
Public hearing on number 40 is today. Are there any proponents?
They need to do.
Trouble, I don't get.
They need to tech.
Yes, I'm Ramey Faust, 1059 County Road 20, Hooper, Nebraska. I just have a brief summary for the listed appeal letter that you've all been included in your packet there. Ramey Faust, Kim Jensen, she's my office manager. She handles most of the bidding procedure in our office. Representing Faust Construction, we're here for you to consider our appeal for the Roanoke ADA project, saving the city $43,000 for additional costs before going to the next bidder. We've done several projects with the city following these guidelines and familiar with the process. This project required the participation of a painting tier contractor. At the bid time, we contacted the entire registered list of 26 painting tier contractors. We only received 4 responses of no interest. The other 22, we had no response involved. We used and listed the Tyrese Painting in our project bid, whom we've used before on city work as a tier contractor, and has been listed as such, and he also stated he currently was on their tier status. The tier list did not show him on the bid list, at the time the project was bid. But this is also true that after the bid, his name did not show up on the registered participation when we were looking at another project. As a matter of fact, in September, for several days, he was a confirmed participant tier contractor with the Contract Compliance Division, and his name was not listed. We finally called and talked to Maria Pertida in this division and questioned why he was not listed yet, and her comment was when the name was not saved, when the computer was updated there. And my question is, how are we to know how often the city updates this when, as a general contractor, we solicit these bids? So it's very confusing on our part who can participate and who cannot. And if we are not considered eligible, are the bids being considered that are eligible, do they have registered tier painting contractors? So in closing, I'd like to state that there is a lack of interest in the registered tier contractor, as shown here. It's difficult at bid time to meet the qualifications outlined in the documents. We'd still like to be considered for this contract with the city using the approved tier contractor. That's all. Thank you for your consideration.
You bet. Other proponents, please. See none. Any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Mr. Pauls, is your light still on? All right. Sorry about that. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, Mr. Faust. I just wanted to thank you for driving in from Hooper, or Hupper, as they say.
That's right.
As I stop at Ray Jansen's grocery store to get my sausages from time to time.
You bet.
You have a fine company, and we've heard nothing but good things about the work that you've performed.
Thank you.
We're in a little bit of a legal predicament in this case, as our city attorney told us, is that if at the time that the bid is submitted, through no fault of your own, that previously certified contractor is no longer on the list, if we were to award your appeal, we could face legal action from those who did submit and had a certified contractor, whether self-performing as the generals who certified on that tier or otherwise with a separate contractor. We would nonetheless be then vulnerable to paying a claim for that denied person.
Understand.
So my heart goes out to you in this case, but our hands are tied.
I understand.
And I wanted to explain to you my position is I'd love to help you. I hope you do bid on future city work.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, in this one, he's recommended that we not do this to avoid a potential claim against the city. So I'm sorry.
Nope,
but I'll still come to Hooper. I'll still golf at the golf course there from time to time. I'll still buy his sausages and hope you still do work for the city.
We will. Thank you very much.
I would add my father-in-law is from Hooper as well, so I have a soft spot there also, and was recently just at the office.
Perfect.
A great place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, motion to deny.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Gurnett. Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Denied 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, third reading and public hearing on agenda items number 41 through 46 and 48 shall be held on October 21st. Item number 47 is an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the major commercial corridor overlay district to incorporate in that district property located at 13525 Millard Avenue. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. We have a request to withdraw that.
Motion approved. Motion to withdraw. Allow withdrawal.
Second. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Thompson. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's withdrawn 7-0.
Can Gary vote?
Oh, Gurnett? Nah, we're going to not let him go. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7C, the public hearing agenda item number 49 shall be held on the second reading.
Motion adjourned. You voted.
Gary, do you want to go first, Gary? Gary, you can.
Gurnett. Gray. Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Thompson. Mr. President.
Yes, thank you.
413.
Beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.